My name is Hunter Way at the Athletes Lounge podcast. I'm here with my guest.
Jake Miners, head football coach at East Central High School.
So, Coach, you guys have been doing pretty good over there so far this season. You're 13-0, and what do you think has led to such a successful season right now?
I really think it's just the senior leadership that we have. We had this group. Really, a lot of them were starting for us at the varsity level as sophomores. And each year that they just continue to get better, continue to push. The envelope themselves, continue to challenge themselves on a weekly basis. And as sophomores, we made it to the regional final, got knocked out by Evansville Memorial. And then last season, we were able to kind of get over that Evansville Memorial hump by beating them in the regional final and then going on to win the state championship. And we have a lot of those guys back again this year. And heading into the season, every coach is worried about, complacency and how we're going to be this year coming back out. But I've had to talk about that much with this group. We talk about really attacking each week. The record will take care of itself. Just attacking each week, trying to improve on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, and take it game by game. It's a long football season. You're really starting in July with these guys. You're starting your weight training much earlier than that, but out on the football field around July and now we're sitting here in November. So it's really just trying to improve, trying to take care of our minds, trying to take care of our bodies. I think our guys have really been able to do that. We've grown a really close group. They're extremely unselfish. And I think that's the biggest part about this group is their unselfishness. And they are truly happy, just winning football games. Doesn't matter who's getting the stats that week. They just want to win football games. So I think that's been kind of the driving force with them, and it's let us have a great season so far.
You mentioned that a lot of these guys were starting at sophomore, as sophomores. Do you think that led to you being better prepared for when they came out to being when they finally were seniors? The team was ready and the team was more mature, maybe than the average team.
Oh yeah, I mean, these guys played 13 games as sophomores. They played 15 as juniors, and now they're heading into week 14. So just when you start stacking up the number of games that these guys have played, there's so many experiences that go in with that. You always have a game that you kind of go back to, whether it's a tough game, whether you might be down by a couple scores, and how you were able to battle back and those sort of things. So we're a very experienced group. And we just understand each other. And honestly, as a coach, from my standpoint, I learned to coach these guys, and I learned what they're good at, what they're bad at. What kind of makes them tick, what buttons we need to push, and some things we honestly have to back off on and let them, just go play ball together. This group's been together since they've been in, kindergarten, first grade, coming up through our feeder system. We knew that they were going to be pretty good coming up, but I just think that we learned so much together again from those experiences that it's really paid off this season. But when we face adversity, when we face obstacles, we've had stuff to lean back on and be able to handle it together.
Your season's not over, so I don't want to look forward, look ahead too much here. But who's giving you the biggest challenge right now? Even though you're undefeated, who gave you the biggest challenge and maybe scared that record a little bit?
Cincinnati Moeller, without a doubt, has been the most talented football team that we have played so far. That they're still in the tournament over in the biggest division in Ohio. They have starting with the running back. He's going to Michigan next year. He's committed to
Yeah.
Michigan, and they just have Division I talent all over the field. They're really comparable to a 5A, 6A school in Indiana. They compete mostly with 6A schools in Indiana. We're the little 4A school that they cross the border to play. But just talent wise, but I would say every week our conference I think gets a bad rap across our state. We are the bigger school in our conference, and there's no doubt about that. But you look at the success of the EIAC in the playoffs. Batesville just got knocked out in the regional final last week in the 3A side of things. But for them to win a sectional, I think in their sectional, it's something crazy like 5 or 6 years in a row. And EIAC schools won that sectional that a lot of our schools are in. So there's a lot of quality football programs along the way. Martinsville was extremely talented. We had to go up to their place in the second round of the playoffs and face them. And They're young, so they're going to be something to be reckoned with the next couple of years. But they just had talent all over the field, and I think this new Pal team that we're getting ready to face here in Week 14. You're not going to face a bad team in the semi-state. That doesn't happen, and they're extremely talented as well. And we what we preach is no matter the team, our preparation stays the same. We're a big believer in our preparation, the way we prepare and the way we play, and you just really have to take the same effort into week to week. But those are some of the teams that have been challenging. And I mean, I think the scoreboard speaks for itself. Martinsville, it was pretty tight until we were able to pull away from there at the end. And the Bowler game was a battle back and forth. We ended up beating them 38-28. But it was a back and forth game there for basically the entire game. We were able to pull away in the second half a little bit. So I mean, we have played some quality football teams. Our schedule is what it is, but even Roncalli by Roncalli standards, their wins and losses this year. Might not be as much as what you would typically expect a Roncalli team, but that doesn't mean that their talent level isn't very good. They have guys all across the board, and specifically their offensive line and defensive line that really challenge you in a lot of ways. So we're happy where we're at. We feel like we're pretty battle tested, heading into Week 14 here.
And you did mention, you talked about your schedule. So do you prefer beating people 64-0, 62-0, or for this team especially, did you prefer those couple close games you did have because it helps, prepare your team a little bit more for when the competition takes, the next step?
That's an interesting question. There's pros and cons to both. I think when you're able to, especially in Indiana, where you get to that running clock scenario at 35 points in the second half, it really allows you to sub down in a hurry. And so Josh Ringer, our running back, who's a candidate for Mr. Football this year, he's had a great career for us. But he's only had to play in 2 or 3 second halves of football games this year. So I think what happens is just some of the miles that we can keep off his legs, so that he's probably healthier than most running backs are at this point in the year. As healthy as you can be for a team that runs the football and stuff. But the other element is you do like those close games because you want to see your kids, how do they respond in pressure, and how do they respond when adversity's hitting them. And again, with this group, we put up some big totals this year, definitely on the offense side of the ball and limited people on the defense side of the ball. But there's pros, like I said, there's pros and cons. You like the fact that you're able to rest some guys in the second half, but you do want those more battle tested games. And I think when you're trying to structure a schedule, you're not structuring it with a blowout in mind. You're structuring it and trying to get the most competitive games that you could possibly get, because that's only going to make your team better come playoff time.
So you look at these, very few close games, but were there any games where you're maybe surprised that you were able to win by that big?
Yeah, heading into so our rival is actually a team called Harrison. We played in Week 2. They're just across the border over in Ohio, and a lot of our kids, grow up together and play football together. We went into that game, we ended up scoring a lot of points and stuff, but we went into that game knowing that we had to play really well, and I think that we were able to catch a few breaks along the way. It played really well. And then the Roncalli game, honestly, watching them on tape, looking at their size, looking at their defensive effort, in some of the big games that they had just lost. They had just lost by, whether it be 3 points or a field goal, whether it's a touchdown. I mean, they're within striking distance of being, honestly, when we were going in to play them, a 7-1 football team. And we were going up there where our program had never won before historically, and they've been a pretty big rival for us, specifically in the playoffs. But going up there and being able to execute, and we were able to gain momentum of that game really early. Defense was able to create a few turnovers, and the offense was able to punch in some touchdowns. So A little surprised. I think that score was, on paper is a little bit larger than how the game was actually being played. And to be quite honest, I mean that's been a lot of our games. Lawrenceburg game, I felt like I needed to go take a nap after that game because it was week one. You never know how your team's going to perform, but and they Lawrenceburg knows what we do. We know what Lawrenceburg does, and it was just a battle. It was a grind, and I know what the scoreboard says on some of these scores, but that if you're really breaking down the game and watching the game, that's just not how the games are being played.
You know, the are you surprised by how good your team has been this year and how big you're able to win some of these games?
Yeah, I think that we knew that we had talent. We're coming off a state championship team where we graduated a good senior class for us, but there were some seniors on that team that we've been missing this year. And I think for us heading into the season, it was, hey, we can't be the same team we were last year. We have a few new faces, a few new guys that we have to try to replace production on offense from a couple seniors heading into this year and a couple of seniors defensively. And so we just really weren't sure. We knew who our top end guys were going to be, the guys that we're probably going to rely on heading into this year. I think the biggest surprise for me so far has been just how well kind of that next group has stepped up. Some guys that we've been requiring a little bit more of this year. They played for us last year, but we were requiring a little bit more of them this year, putting them in some tougher spots. And they've really stepped up to the plate. It's no secret we came off the state championship last year, and every team's been gunning for us since week one. And we've really had to come out and play our best football. There's been so many times this year on film that the team we have seen on film, the defensive scheme or the offensive scheme that we've seen on film, isn't the same scheme we see on Friday night because they switch things up on us. And I think the biggest shock for me is just how well our guys have been able to react to that. The in-game adjustments that we make as coaches, but that the players are able to go out and execute has been a definite bright spot for us this year.
What's what's been the biggest I guess surprise this year for you for this overall for this team?
Yeah, I think it's just how well our defense has meshed together. I think when you put up so many offensive statistics like our offense has been able to do, a lot of times the defense kind of gets overshadowed. And really, our defense has been the one that's been giving the offense favorable field position. They've been the one that's been creating turnovers. So ones, we always preach that if you hold a team to 7 or under, you're going to win a lot of football games. And our defense has been able to do that in most of the games. So I think that's been a pleasant surprise for us. And then we up front on our offensive line, we only start two seniors. The two seniors that returned from us last year, that's probably our biggest question mark coming into the season. We start junior, a sophomore, and a freshman on the offensive line. And the biggest concern you have on the offense side of the ball is how quickly can your offensive line gel, because that's a position where you got to have reps next to each other. You got to play together. And but really, I was shocked week one on the opening drive when our offensive line was gelling. They were making checks themselves. They were making calls themselves, and it really speaks highly of our two seniors. But it also speaks highly of those underclassmen that were starting varsity football for their first time, getting in there and playing football. And I think as we've gone out throughout the year, we've learned a little bit more about those guys. But those guys have continued to grow and grow and grow. And I think that position group specifically has been kind of the spearhead of our success offensively, because you can't do anything without an offensive line. And we really like to run the football and, allowing our running backs to have freedom out there. And, those two groups with just our defense as a whole and our offensive line, I would say, has been kind of the biggest surprise from our coaching staff about just how well they played.
How nerve-wracking is it to have a freshman starting on the O-line?
So for me, probably a lot more nervous than him. He's one of these guys who just seemed like he's built for high school football. we challenged him when he came into us. He was coming up and starting to work out with us and that sort of stuff. And we said, hey, you have an opportunity to start on the offensive line, but you got to go compete. You got to go win a job for yourself. And but going into specifically week one, you don't know what you're going to get. He's a freshman. He had just started high school, trying to figure out his way around the high school, and here he is playing, 14 years old, playing against a bunch of 18-year-olds, and you never know how you're going to react. And he calmed my fears after the first half of football that he played. We don't have a whole lot of freshmen ever starting for us at any position, much less on the offensive line. And to watch him go out and play the first half he did a varsity football, it's like, oh yeah, this guy's ready for us. So honestly, after that first half, we kind of forget that he's a freshman from time to time until till we have to do scouting reports and stuff like that. But he's had an exceptional year. I mean, he's only going to continue to get better for us, and for him, hopefully, potentially be a 4-year starter for us up front, will eventually become one of the leaders for us.
Yeah, how do you prevent your team from getting too overconfident when you have, I mean, you destroyed some people this year, and then you've had some closer games. But how do you keep a team grounded when it is I kind of mentioned 14 to 18-year-olds, who sometimes feel invincible?
Yeah, it's a challenge, I would say. I think first and foremost, you have to be honest with them, and you have to really break things down and say, here's where we screwed up, but we're not going to be too hard on you. But we got to teach it. We got to learn. And we're very honest about our regular season. Yes, wins and losses are important to us, but we're trying to play our best football come week 10, and with that comes correction. And so we're extremely honest with our guys. We're extremely honest with how we feel what the other team is presenting. If we feel like that we should win the battle in the trenches, we're honest with them about that on Monday. We tell them, that we should win it this week, but it's a challenge to go win it. And that's kind of what we preach. And then the other thing is this group is just they're trying to do something this year that's never been done in our program, and that's win back-to-back state championships. We've won 3 as a program, but we never won back-to-back. And I think they really want to set themselves apart from some of the quality classes that have come through here, so that, when they're looked at in the record books 10, 15 years from now, they're the class that was able to do it. And I think it just goes back to, if you saw this group on a Friday night getting off the bus or warming up, they're not big rah guys. They're super chilled and laid back, and it drives me nuts because I'm so competitive and want them operating a certain way. But I've had to learn to back off this group because they just want to go out and play football, and they go out and play for each other, and they really just want to execute for each other. So, I think that we've accepted that challenge a lot this year. We've talked a lot about the mental side of things. I showed them a few examples of teams, not just in high school, but in pros and college that, have super talented teams, but weren't able to replicate success or have success together because something must be going on internally. And that's where we've really tried to keep focused, keep things normal, to show them that we don't want to be this team over here. We want to be this team over here. And the unique thing is we've talked about the 2018, 2019 New Pal teams that went back to back, the teams that were getting ready to play, and how they were able to. They had similar boat where they had a lot of seniors coming back in those years, and those guys going out, and overcoming adversity the next year. And I think where a lot of people fail is you just think that you're not going to face any adversity. That you're just going to keep on keeping on, and that's not the case at all. So, we did some things over the summer to kind of challenge this group a little bit. Put them in some adverse situations. We went out and during 7-on-7s, we went to a Colts thing where we played some 5A, 6A schools, played the best of the best, doing something, in 7-on-7, which is for us and how heavy of a run team we can be at times. We also have a decent pass game, but going up and challenging these guys against good competition. We went over to Cincinnati and played some really quality programs this summer to really try to put our guys in adverse situations so they'd overcome it together. So that way, coming into the season, they kind of understood, hey, we got to keep fighting. We got to keep getting better. And keep pushing this thing along.
How big of it is an advantage? How big of an advantage is it to where maybe some of the competition you play is a little bit smaller in size wise, but you're right next to an area in Cincinnati where they have big time schools, and I guess you're kind of in between Indy too. But how big is it to have Cincinnati right there where you can go 7-on-7 them and do some stuff against competition? It's 5 or 6 A schools if they're in Indiana.
Yeah, it's huge. It's huge. We anytime we get an opening in our schedule, those schools are begging to play us first of all, and then we're begging to play them because just first of all, it's not a far travel for us. But second of all, you're just playing quality football. Cincinnati has been very well known for their high school football for decades, and they have some great football in there. And then, I mean, the other thing is our guys like seeing their stats up against those guys, right? I mean,
Yeah.
we played Moeller this year. That Edward Marshall was committed to Michigan, has all kinds of crazy stats, and our running back likes to see his stats up, comparable to his and things like that. But we're able to jump over there during the summertime to go get some really quality football programs. Oak Hills is a big school we've gone against the last several summers. Coleraine for about the last 10 years, we've been mixing it up with them. Um, and they just have some athletes that I guess are a little bit different than what we might typically face at the 4A level because those are Division I schools that are sending multiple guys to Division I every single year, and to get to go up and compete against those guys, I think it's huge. Not only from the standpoint of you're getting better going against those guys, but then when you're able to have success and compete against those guys as well, and offer a competitive, whether it's 7-on-7 or 11-on-11, you're offering a competitive period against those guys. It gives you some confidence of, hey, we might not be too bad. Well, we might be pretty good too. So when you dive over, I think it just gives you a lot of confidence when you dive into the regular season and you're facing Indiana schools. But I'm telling you, we played a lot of teams around Indy. We played some teams over towards Evansville. We played teams across the state, and Indiana is not far behind Cincinnati, if at all. I think Cincinnati gets a lot of publicity, and they do got a lot of guys who are really good. But you get in these certain pockets of Indiana, and the talent level is equal, if not, maybe just a little bit better, depending on who you're going against. And so I think Indiana's done a really good job of closing that gap that once existed between Cincinnati and the state of Indiana.
What's your background in coaching? How did you get into coaching?
Yeah, so I got into coaching. When I was in high school, I was a baseball guy too, and I would help out with some pitching lessons to some younger guys. And we have a team photographer who still actually is our team photographer on the football team. I was doing some lessons for her grandson, and after we were done, she said, you really ought to become a teacher and a coach. And I just kind of blew it off at the time. Actually I went to Franklin College, went in as a broadcast journalism student for 1 year, then made the change. Sue tells me all the time, you got smart. You got into switch over to teaching with the idea that I wanted to get into coaching. And so my first year out of college, I was hired at Franklin County High School that's just north of us. Spent 1 year over there before coming back to East Central, and I've been at East Central for the last 10. My first 5 years over here at East Central, I mean, I think I filled nearly every role you could probably fill besides offense coordinator or defense coordinator, between the freshman teams and the JV teams and getting water and handling managers and, all the kind of behind the scenes thing. And I think that really prepared me for when the job was open. And I was fortunate enough, right the year before I got the job, our head coach, Justin Roden, left to accept the Noblesville job. Our athletic director, who was actually my football coach coming through East Central, stepped back in as an interim head coach for a year, but named me the assistant head coach to really kind of teach me, the behind the scenes of what being a head coach really means. And the fundraising and the booster meetings and just how to handle yourself. And that was such a blessing for me. So then when I was able to get the job, I kind of had I had my feet set. And the biggest thing for me has been I've been able to keep the coaching staff together for the most part, the nucleus of our coaching staff. I'm still the fourth youngest guy on our coaching staff. So I got a lot of experience around me, a lot of guys, a lot of voices that are able to help me through this process. And um, we've been very fortunate in those 5-year run to be able to work with a lot of quality football players. But um, that's it's kind of my thing is I try to keep as many old guys around as possible, because they're the smart ones, and I just have to kind of steer the ship and do the dirty work and the fundraisers that they don't want to do. But I think leading up to what who I am today is I played for Don Stonefield, who had I won't say, I guess, a unique way of coaching, but he had a certain style of coaching. And then I went to Franklin College, and I've played football for a year before switching over to baseball. But I played under a man named Mike Leonard at Franklin College, and had a totally polar opposite way of coaching than Don did. But they both worked, and they're both successful with it. And then when I got into coaching, just watching Shane Wellman's the first guy I worked under, and then Justin Roden, and then Don Stonefield again, and just watching how they handle kids, and um, how they handle parents and media, it just all the things that go into it. And the best advice I ever got was from actually one of our legendary he's been a head coach in East Central's program, but he was the offensive line coach when I came back over here. His name's Tim Belmer, and he said, "Hey, I know you have all of this stuff from people that you've been around, but you got to go be you, and you got to develop your own coaching style." So I'm probably a little bit more laid back than most coaches, but it fits me, and it fits who I am, and I've tried to take the positives of each coach that I've worked under and really apply them, to where I am today. And those guys, have offered incredible lessons. They're still a resource for me. I call them all the time, text them all the time. Hey, I'm dealing with this situation. What do you think? And those guys have been great resources for me and really have built me into who I am.
Last question. What would it mean for you personally to win them back to back?
I think personally, it'd be a payoff. Very rarely in the game of football do you get rewarded for the hard work that everybody has put in. And I'm not just talking about myself, but our program and all the coaches and the players. And very rarely, in Indiana, there's only 6 teams that are happy at the end of the season. And we've been fortunate to know what that feels like. And I think that's a driving force that you always want to do that. But again, it's probably no different than the seniors. They're shooting for a back-to-back state championship, and something that's never been done in our history. And for me, who has grown up in this community, dreaming about playing for East Central high school football, never in my wildest dreams thinking that I would become the head coach of East Central, getting to play for 4 years through this program, always having an idea that I think it'd be pretty cool to come back and coach and teach. And it just kind of worked out for me that I got to become the head coach, and to be able to lead them to do something that our program's never done before. I think just personally, I wouldn't have words, of what that would feel like. I think it would just make me feel so proud, of our program and of our group and of our community. One of the coolest things about just even making it to the state championship game is you really get to put your community in our small little St. Leon, Indiana, where we're located. You get to put them on the map for a day, and you really get to celebrate your community, not just your football program, and to really be able to celebrate with our small community. I think that'd be really cool, it would be a really special thing. But first things first, you got to win to get there. And so we're putting all of our hard work into that. But that's been in the back of my mind, honestly, since we won last year.
So that's really all I have prepared question wise. Anything you have, Coach?
No, I just appreciate you having me on. Giving us a chance to talk about my program a little bit, and our program that we have down here. And it's a really special place, and I'm glad to be able to get to share a little bit about what we're about.
Well, I've been Hunter Way at the Athletes Lounge podcast, and thanks for coming on, Coach.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Hey guys, this is Hunter with the Athletes Lounge podcast. Please like, share, and subscribe where you can. Thanks.